Hi everyone and welcome back to Macaroon. My original idea for this video was to create some tear-apart squishies inspired by this new trend from iBloom. These are really cute but kind of disturbing because you have to forcibly rip the two animals apart. I wanted to make a smaller version from scratch using polymer clay, silicone molds, and Hitohada gel. However, I completely underestimated how difficult the material would be to work with. If you're new to my channel, then here's a quick recap on Hitohada gel. It's a two-part resin made in Japan that's designed for creating squishies. The word Hitohada actually means human skin or body warmth, so the result is meant to simulate the softness of human flesh. Slightly creepy, but there you go. Hitohada gel comes in 3 different types: milky, transparent, and foamy. I have loads of tutorials featuring the milky and transparent types. Those are quite tricky to learn, but once I got the hang of it, I really like using them for making unique squishies. I've only used Foamy Hitohada gel once before, and you might have missed it completely because it was part of this video on my other channel, Cute Life Hacks. I've always wanted to try making something more complex than cupcakes, and this video seemed like the perfect opportunity. The inspiration comes from iBloom, which is the company that basically invented and popularized slow-rising squishies. These squishies are made from polyurethane foam, and Foamy Hitohada gel is the same material that lets you replicate this at home. But I learned the hard way that foamy resin is incredibly hard to use, which you'll see later in this video. So the first step is to examine real tear-apart squishies. I ordered these directly from the iBloom website and they arrived pretty quickly. However, the shipping and customs fees did add quite a bit on top, so be sure to factor those in if you're buying from Japan. Like all iBloom squishies, the quality of these are immaculate. I love how the packaging makes it look like bread inside a wrapper. The design is simple but clever, and you have to tear through the base to get 2 separate keychains. This part is either satisfying or creepy, depending on your viewpoint. Now that I've seen the squishies up close, I know what kind of shape is needed for the tearing mechanism to work, and I'm going to replicate this using polymer clay. I'm using half a pack of Fimo and making 2 large oval shapes. These are pressed together and the edges smoothed out. The trick here is to retain the sharp inward edge as much as possible, but still making sure the 2 sides are well attached. Then I'm adding some details to make a koala and a cat design. At this point, I was a bit unsure about the ears because anything that sticks out tends to cause problems when demolding. So I decided to make a second squishy and keep everything as smooth as possible. This design could easily work for a chicken, a penguin, a pig, or puppy. The ears are small and flat, which would be much easier to mold. Then I baked it for 30 minutes at 100 degrees Celsius or 200 Fahrenheit. Of course, you can always buy pre-made silicone molds, but I find that nothing quite beats the creative freedom of making it from scratch. How else can we end up with squishies like these? Molding is the next stage, and I always use these 2-part putties. Mix them together until you have a ball at least twice the size of the piece you want to mold. Hold it in the palm of one hand like this, and push your piece inside using a smooth horizontal motion. Keep your hand cupped around the putty so you can apply gentle pressure from all sides. This reduces the chances of air bubbles and ensures a really smooth cast of every small detail. Make sure the sides reach over the top edge of your design. Then place it upright on a flat surface and leave to set. These were a bit tricky to demold because of the shape, and I ended up breaking the 2 animals apart. However, the mold itself turned out great, including the ears, which I was most worried about. Now we can finally get started with the squishy making. This is Foamy Hitohada gel, and for some reason it doesn't come in a box like the other 2. All Hitohada gels have different chemical compositions and mixing ratios. This one has to be mixed in a ratio of 100 to 64, which seems oddly specific. The instructions claim that if you miss the ratio by 1%, then the whole thing might fail, which doesn't seem too reassuring. I feel the easiest method is to measure out 10 grams of the first liquid, followed by 6.4 grams of the second liquid. Since I've used this once before, I know that the curing process begins right away and I have to work fast. After stirring it for 10 seconds, the mixture starts foaming up and it looks a bit like frothy condensed milk. This needs to be poured into the mold as soon as possible because it's going to cure within minutes. The biggest problem with Foamy Hitohada gel is that it continues expanding while in the mold. The instructions say that it can grow 5 to 8 times its own size, which is kind of unhelpful if you have to estimate how much to pour inside. My first attempt started expanding way too fast, and you can see me try to take off the excess. This seemed to work at first, but then there comes a point where touching the foam causes everything to collapse. This is because the mixture cures so quickly that it sticks to the spoon and it pulls apart all the air bubbles that have been forming. Obviously, this one ended up as a complete fail. The only good thing about Foamy Hitohada gel is that it's pretty easy to clean. Once cured, it doesn't stick to plastic, so you can reuse mixing cups and spoons. For my second attempt, I decided to pour in less foam and use the same batch on both molds. This one expanded quite nicely and is just a tiny bit smaller than I would have liked. But as you can see, it wasn't able to pick up the ears because the gaps were too small for the foam to get in. Luckily, the second squishy, which was designed for easy demolding, turned out really well. I didn't want to give up the first design, so I kept on trying to make it work. I tried spreading the foam out with a toothpick, but it was still very tricky. Then I used a pipette to fill the smaller holes with foam first and poured the rest in after. This one looked promising, but the cat ears were still incomplete. After about 5 attempts, I just gave up and had to accept that this material isn't designed for very small cavities. This probably explains why the majority of slow-rising squishies are much bigger and have fairly simple shapes. The next step is how to color these squishies, and I specifically don't want to use any type of paint. I know that fabric or acrylic paints are the most popular squishy coloring methods, and I also did a detailed test for those in this video. But as you can see, this foamy squishy has a delicate fluffy texture, and I really don't want to lose that by covering it up with a thick layer of paint. So instead I'm going to try alcohol markers or pastel dust. It's good that I have so many failed attempts because I can use these as the test pieces. Right away, I can tell that the marker ink is too blotchy and the color is too bright. It's going to be impossible to create the right shades or blend anything together. Next, I'm trying soft pastel dust, and this looks a lot more promising. The colors are still a bit uneven, but you can blend them out pretty well with your fingers. So this is the method I'm going to use for the final squishies. I'm going to go with a bright yellow and a pink for this one. The pigment goes on pretty well and feels very similar to applying makeup. I think you could actually use this as a beauty blender as well. After it's done, I'm going to give it a generous coat of Stronghold hairspray. This prevents the color from transferring onto your fingers, however some darker shades may still rub off. Now I'm adding the final details using acrylic paint, and this is fine because it only covers a very tiny area. I'm pretty impressed by how much shading you can achieve using pastel dust. I can create all kinds of designs here that look very subtle and realistic. And now our DIY tear-apart squishies are done. These are satisfyingly soft and fun to play with. However, the real test is whether they can be torn apart as well. After all the effort that went into making these, I was a bit sad about tearing them in half. But as you can see, these separated quite easily. The raw foam on the bottom can be trimmed a bit, but on the whole I was very pleased with the result. The second one also came apart nicely, and you get 2 little squishies which will probably make nice friendship gifts. Of course, you don't have to make these with Foamy Hitohada gel, which is so hard to control. I'm pretty sure this shape also works with milky or clear gel or any type of soft resin. I want to test that out and post the result as a YouTube short, so be sure to follow me if you want to see it. I'm Joanna, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye!